Welcome back, everybody, to the Real Estate Talk Show, your source for all things real estate. Having an amazing conversation here with one of your favorites, George Carras, president of RealNet Canada. And we talked a lot about, well, just really where we're at in terms of the market. A lot of you ask, well, okay, hang on, prices are just getting exorbitantly expensive. Where can I buy? I can't even afford to be in this city. Well, let's talk about where and what options for people. We get this question all the time, George, okay? It's a really hard one to answer. Where's the next place? Where should I buy? Where should I buy new? Where am I going to get the most, value? So I'm just going to throw that over to you.
Real estate, serves a number of different, purposes. And, if it's is it a home? Is it a place where you're, investing to live? Is it a place that you're investing, for capital appreciation? Is it a place that you're investing for
cash flow,
for income?
Yep.
That's right. All these different attributes. And, as an asset class, in the broader investment market, you're either buying equities like, stocks, you're buying fixed income and bonds, or you're buying these alternative assets. And real estate, whether it's commercial office or, apartments or condos or homes tend to fit in that alternative asset category. So, value is in the eye of the beholder. But if you look at it, simply as, dwellings, what people used to say, I'm going to, my biggest investment is in my house.
That's right.
I think at this point, the condition that you're looking at in pricing is, what can people afford? And, that rising detached home price in the 416, in the GTA, and even in relative to the Greater Golden Horseshoe. I mean, if you look at new homes, once again, between the GTA and the GGH, and the boundary condition, like those municipalities that are in GTA and then the ones that are just on the outside in the GGH. Remember,
so when you say GGH, just to remind everyone?
Greater Golden Horseshoe.
There you go. Okay.
So that would be outside in Guelph and, KW and Hamilton. And remember, a while ago, there used to be that commercial that said it's worth the drive to Acton. Well, now it's actually worth the drive from Acton because you can see the price of the homes that are, in the Greater Golden Horseshoe municipality. So if you're looking at that boundary condition of, am I in Brampton, am I in sort of Milton, or do I just go a little further to Cambridge, KW, or Hamilton? That's a 60% savings.
Wow, that's substantial.
So it's kind of worth that drive.
Certainly is.
Especially if you can't afford that home, as we've said before, the drive until you qualify, right? So I think that's, what you're seeing from an affordability perspective in the GTA. If you're a new home and you're in Halton, that's on a detached home on a 40-foot lot, that's well over $900,000. In Halton and in Peel and York, those are about $700,000. Right. So if you're that household that's looking for that $500,000, which is a lot of money, new detached home, you're either looking at Durham in the GTA, or you're looking at places like Hamilton, South Simcoe, Waterloo, or Wellington for that $500,000. So you've got to go that much further out to find that affordability. Affordability.
And I laugh, George, that we talk $500,000 as affordability. I mean, really. Yeah. And let's touch upon the fact that people think, well, can this continue on? I mean, is this something that we'll continue to see? People are waiting on the market thinking that it's inevitable that there'll be a correction, and people are waiting for that to happen before they get in. What do you say to that? I mean, there's a lot of parameters that go into deciding how much housing and how much supply. You mentioned earlier, before we took a break, that we are in a shortage. People see those cranes and they're fearful, thinking, how is this possible? How can we continue to build up? How is there really that need? We have a lot of people reporting that, inevitably that's also going to burst. Right. So what are your comments on all that? I know there's a bunch I just threw at you, but they're all related.
So I think, there's about three things you'd have to ask yourself. The first one is an absolute wild card. Like, what happens in the financial system? What happens to mortgage? And we lessons learned that we all learned back in 2008, 2009 is, we can't predict that. No. The second major question you're going to ask is, what's driving all of that development is growth. So the fundamental way that we're growing is through immigration. So you got to ask yourself, will people still want to move into the GTA? And the third question is, what kind of housing forms will they have available to them? So I think, in the latter and last part, it looks very clear that intensification is not going away. that land use policy framework is here to stay, and even if it changed, it would take a decade for it to reverse. So we're going to
come into play.
We're going to be in a move, grow up, not out environment for quite a while here.
Right.
And the second, so back to the second question we all ask ourselves is, will this region continue to grow? And I think, the more we look outside of, Canada, even, inside of Canada, we're seeing that, reverse migration back into Ontario. I think it's a relatively safe bet. But that's where I think getting it right here is vital, because if you look at the GGH, if you drew a map of Canada and colored in the GGH, you'd cover about 0.3% of the land area of Canada. But that's home to about 26% of Canadians. So so
26% are
Canada,
in that Golden Horseshoe,
Greater Golden
region.
Horseshoe.
Yeah.
So getting it right here isn't just important for getting it right for the residents of this region. I would argue getting it right in the GGH means it's really important for all of Canada. So we have a really exciting, complicated, and important future ahead.
But this is something that we're experiencing now, where other municipalities around the world have already been here. And we could just look to other places as examples. And then, of course, we should do so, but at the same time improving how in which we make sure we accommodate the immigrants, people coming in, investors that are wanting to buy. I mean, one thing that you'll agree is that we hear this all the time. People from other parts of the world, they want to put their money here in this country because it's safe. This is what you hear time and time again. And for developers, they're not going to build something unless there's a demand. They're not going to, dig ground unless they have the financing in play, which means a certain amount sold to meet the demand. And that's what's important. When you see those cranes, people forget it's all in play. There's already a certain amount sold before they can even go to that point.
And I think so from outside looking into Canada, I mean, I think the one other thing that we've seen just recently is just the impact of the dollar. We got cheaper.
We did.
By doing nothing other than watching our dollar go down, unfortunately.
It just happened.
Yeah, so it became an easier buy
we knew it was
to buy
coming,
in
George.
Canada. But I think the safe bet is an interesting point, and lessons that we can learn here from other parts. I think if we look to places like Vancouver, which is important because it's a Canadian market. Everyone's been calling Vancouver is about to tank forever.
Just read it again this morning.
But what we have seen is that price gap condition that we are now, seeing now we're in the third inning of, and our gap here in between detached home and condo is around $300,000. In Vancouver, that's probably closer to $800,000. So we are now where they were about 10 years ago.
10 years ago, okay.
So in the difference between, this market and that market, like in Vancouver, you're between the water and the mountains, right? Like the only way you can grow is up. Here, you're in the GTA, you're effectively between water and policy mountains. For the market's impact, it's the same.
I love how you said that. That's great.
It's essentially the same. Like people, you drive, you just don't see the mountain, but there's a
policy mountains.
Yeah,
see, I love how you put things. It's true, and you're right. It could change. Policies, they're there. They can change, but it's the time and duration it takes for those to actually take place. So let's do a little report card thing, because you had mentioned, of course, when we're in the second quarter of 2015, we know that the first quarter, here's what we're looking at. But I always believe, it's to even understand those numbers when you're saying for new home builds, it's slightly down. But if you were to say compared to last year, when you're looking at where we were at last year, is that what you're saying? We're down from this time last year? I mean, it's all how we say those numbers.
Yeah. So the perspective is sales. I guess you'd say, new home sales in total are down by about 4%. It's not a big deal.
Not at all.
What you are seeing, though, is the ratio between sales and supply that gives you a sense of why are they down. And again, in new homes, like resale, you can't get sales that aren't, that's if it's not for sale.
It's not for sale. Right.
It's hard
you
to buy
can't post
it.
it sold. That's correct. Yeah.
And particularly around developments, if it's not sitting in a builder's sales center, it will not get sold. So the supply is vital to watch, and we can see the kind of supply we're getting and how expensive that supply is when it makes its way into the builder's sales center, whether it's a detached subdivision or a condo. So I think you're seeing that same macro constraint play forward into the second quarter, in fact, into the next 5 years. So I think you'll see the continued demand for for those ground-oriented home types, you'll see challenges on price because of cost and development charges and land cost and so on. So I think that will continue. I think what you are seeing is on the high-rise side, moderation of price, and you're also seeing some additional complexity, which is now coming through in purpose-built rental.
Right.
So, and that's sort of for the condo investor that used to be active in that market to buy the condo when it gets built and then rent it out. You got to be you got to also be more in tune with what's happening on purpose-built rental because that's more supply.
All right, George, we're going to come back because we have lots more to talk about.